Hello and welcome to The Exchange, a program where we exchange ideas and opinions on matters that affect our everyday lives. I'm Rob Buckingham and my co-host on The Exchange is my wife, Christie.
It's great to be here. We're going to have a good show today.
We certainly are.
On today's show, we're going to be discussing a role reversal that is taking place in many Australian homes. Are men okay with staying at home and looking after the kids whilst working mums are the main breadwinners?
To discuss this topic, we're thrilled to be joined by a woman who has a wealth of experience as a professional retailer. Felicity McGahan, welcome to you.
Thanks. Welcome, Felicity.
Thank you.
We're also very happy to welcome Clint Greagen, a stay-at-home dad with 4 kids. Hi, Clint.
How you
welcome
going?
to the show. It's good
Thanks.
to have you. Great to have you. Before we start our discussion today, let's take a look at this.
Traditionally, it's been the woman's job to stay at home and raise the family. But times are changing. And these days, there's a much fairer spread of responsibilities. And more women are going back to work after having had children, leaving their husbands at home to raise the family. There's nothing wrong with women being the main breadwinners, is there?
Today we have a house husband and a working mother and wife with us who have reversed roles. Welcome, Clint and Felicity. It's great to have you here today. Why did you change roles and how's that working for you?
For me and my wife Tanya, it was come down to a decision about career choices. Basically, I'd always worked just for money while we were both working, and had no real strict career ambitions. Whereas my wife had career goals from a very early age. So for us, when we decided one of us was going to stay home and look after the kids,
it was just automatically you.
It wasn't much of a decision. Yeah, it was like Tanya can keep forging her career, and I'll take on that role. So
okay.
Yeah.
And what about you, Felicity?
Yeah, I think, it was never really a conversation. It just evolved a little bit. I think what you're saying is that we just, I've always loved working and been really passionate about my career and, moving forward with that. And then when Mark and I got married, I was pregnant, and then it just felt right that he stayed at home with his patients and I went to work with my intensity.
So you've worked right from the beginning?
Absolutely. We don't know anything else.
Did you take much time off to actually have your babies?
I took I had babies in America, so you get 20 weeks there. So
okay.
I took the 20 weeks off, and yeah, then he got the papoose and
off
the
he
baby.
Went. And were you sad to be going back to work, or could you not wait by that stage?
I wouldn't say I was sad. I think that, I think no mum likes to go back to work, but I think that that's what you need to do.
Right.
And it wasn't sad to see that the kids were with him.
Yeah, easier than childcare, you think?
Oh, well, yeah, because I think you could be more flexible. Like Mark would bring them in to lunch, and, I was still trying to feed them as well. So being that, he had to pop in at certain times of the day for those first few months back at work.
Yeah.
Amazing. Clint, what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, I really hate that question because you've got the, getting up early between 5 and 6 with the youngest and getting into the school routine of lunches and bags and hurrying everyone along for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
It's exhausting.
But I'd rather people ask me, what's a typical night like?
Okay, what's a typical night like for you?
Well, you can be up, several times a night. I've got 4 children, so 2 of them are still fairly young. You've got nightmares, the occasional wet bed, if they've got a cold.
Yeah.
I don't think I've slept through the night more than probably a dozen times in the last 8 years.
So you do all of that. Is that how you've worked it out?
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always done that. I don't know. Well, my wife's breastfed all 4 babies, so I've just sort of seen it as my responsibility to get up if the baby's crying and take the baby to the breast, basically.
Right.
And we did the same thing with, because they were breastfed up to 18 months or 2 years, so a lot of the time I was in the Tarago driving the kids around, taking the baby to the breast wherever Tanya was working, so...
Fantastic.
So there's been a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
But the days are really, really busy, full-on, non-stop, from about 5 till about 11 or 12 at night.
That's amazing. And
Big
then
day.
broken sleep.
And of course the broken sleep.
Do you get weekends off?
It's pretty much a 24-hour day. No, I love, people say, oh, it's holidays,
No, it isn't.
When you're a stay-at-home parent, it's round the clock.
Well, I'm going to ask Felicity the same question, and I'd like you just put your head on the panel and have a nap for the next couple of minutes. Felicity, what about a typical day for you? And also your husband.
Yeah, I always like 2-floor houses, so I kind of get out of bed, and Mark wakes me up with the kids. I think I'm probably another kid to him in the morning. He's our alarm clock, and then he'll bring my coffee up, and I'll have my coffee, have my shower, and I'll be getting organised, and he's parallel, like with the kids downstairs, getting them their breakfast. He's pretty excited that they've just moved to schools with uniforms. He's a huge fan of that.
Easier.
Yeah, he was starting to clash a bit with my daughter on what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
Which I then had to get more involved given my background. But yeah, so I'm out of the door by 7:30, 7:30, and then he continues with his role. And I head off to the office.
You're fairly independent in the morning, getting ready. So
yeah,
you don't
it's very like bizarre if something, you know, even if I get a later meeting, I might stick to that schedule and just take a few calls.
Because you don't want that
havoc.
havoc.
I don't want to mess he runs a very tight ship. So, you know, then my work life is I'm pretty much in meetings all day. We don't talk a lot during the day. He's busy doing his stuff, I do mine, and then we kind of reconnect at the end of the day. If I do get a text from him,
So who takes on the parenting in the evening? Is that you or him?
Well, Mark does. He takes the kids to loads of activities. I don't know if you do them all as well, but he does swimming and scouts and all of these soccer. So he does lots of different activities with the kids. By the time I get home at 7:30, they'll have their dinner, and then that's our time that the two of us will sit down and enjoy that time together. But if the kids are sick, that's probably where it changes a little bit with our situation. They'll call out for me during the night. So.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It is interesting.
And then do you spend time with them on the weekend? Like, when do you have your mummy-child time?
Yeah, well, my daughter, Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, I may be baking cookies because they're very much then when they've got you. There's things they want to do. And then going to their sports on the weekends and things like that. And just, you know, hanging out. We love our home and we love just being at home as a family.
Nice.
Watching a movie, being on the couch under a blanket together. Very as simple and uncomplicated as it can be.
Yeah.
That sounds
Now,
good.
both of your children are at school.
Yeah.
And so what does Mark do during the day? I know that's probably a question that I could never, ever ask to a stay-at-home mum.
I didn't know the answer to that until there was a day in San Francisco when I decided to do an off-site at the house. And I always wondered what he did at home. And I actually thought, you know, I was there with my team and then next minute a truck full of people jumped out and I thought we were being robbed. And I called Mark. He's like, they're just the gardeners. And I'm like, we've got gardeners? Like, I was totally convinced he's been doing the gardening. And it's like, who else do we have? We've got a cleaner, we've got the gardeners. So what does Mark do during the day? Well, he catches up. I mean, he's got like a small window. But he's also doing all of the home, you know, he's the CFO of the home as well.
Okay.
So he's
so
doing all the bills.
cleaner and the...
Yeah, he's not doing cleaning. He draws the line on some things. He's certainly, like, he'll have support in the cleaning and he won't do any... I think we keep the dry cleaner in business. He draws the line. We don't own an iron. Things like that, but...
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, did you have a good sleep, first of all? Are you feeling more
I
refreshed
feel much
now?
better. I just took a nap then, thanks.
Okay.
It was nice.
Yeah. And a typical day for your wife, she's out...
Yeah, she's up and out pretty much at the same time. Because we've got younger kids who are, you know, 2-year-olds still in nappies and that sort of stuff. So she'll get up and get ready, and then in the time she's got, she might chuck a nappy on Mackie and get him changed for me. But you know, the two youngest ones will run over when she goes to make her breakfast shake in the morning. So there's that interaction, same sort of thing in the morning. But she's out by about 7:30, 8 o'clock most mornings at the latest, and then it's back into home. Yeah, well, we're pretty lucky in that we're a bit flexible because she has 3 different jobs. We're in a clinic not too far away, and she works at La Trobe Uni just around the corner. So we're pretty lucky that she's in our lives a bit. But she has a really busy periods where we don't see her for, you know, the majority of the day. But yeah, we're lucky to have her in our lives a bit.
Are there some roles, do you think, that just can't be changed? Like you talked about the kids calling for you at night. Is there other things that you can think of that you think is typically left for the gender, regardless of who's working?
If I could breastfeed, Tanya would be free. You know, she could have she could sleep through the night.
And the delivery.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the delivery would. Yeah. I don't want that one.
No, you're in good company.
It's hard enough just being there next to Tanya. Yeah. There are periods of time I've noticed ages where the kids will have that thing for mum, and then it'll swing over and be for me. So you know, one of our boys. Lewis went through a real clingy stage. He was a real clingy baby right to about 18 months, and if Tanya was in the house, he'd be crawling all over the ground, grabbing her ankles and that sort of stuff. But once he got to a certain age, then he was clingy for me. So I have noticed that there's been, probably early on, they're much more clingy for mum, but it sort of cycles in and out of that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Felicity, same?
Yeah, there are cycles.
Yeah.
And I think they're really hard. That first cycle, I remember when Chloe turned on Mark for a minute and I was her best friend and I was like, he does everything for you. And I think it was a real challenge for him when she went through that stage. She's back now and I'm the
You sort of work out to try not to take it too personally, don't you, with the kids, because they can be evil.
This is great discussion. We'll be back with more in just a moment. You're on The Exchange. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're having a great discussion with Felicity McGahan and Clint Greagen about whether men are okay at switching roles and staying at home with their kids while their wives are the main breadwinners.
Yeah, I'd like to know, guys, have you made a decision purely on income? You mentioned earlier that you had, because your wife is a physiotherapist and you worked...
I know it wasn't purely income. I think, finances, I think for the majority of people would have a bearing on it.
Right.
But for us, it was about what was going to make us happiest, and for Tanya, she'd had that focus on career for such a long time that to let that go wouldn't have been the best thing, and I just didn't have that focus, so it was easier for me to I suppose I've had a more my passions come through non-paid work, so I could do that when I had a chance at home at night time or whatever. So that just made us happy, basically.
And you're writing a novel, I believe, is that right, or co-writing?
Yeah, finished.
You finished
a book, yeah.
Excellent.
So yeah, my passions could be dealt with, whereas if we just said, you know, you're the man, you're the woman, I have to go to work, I wouldn't have been as happy because I didn't really enjoy my work that much, and Tanya wouldn't have been as happy because she's put so much effort into her career this far. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Felicity?
No, we never had the conversation. I mean, Mark and I have a huge history where we actually dated in high school, and then I moved to the States for my job, and then called him one day to ask if he'd move to America, and we'd see what would happen if we both lived in the same country. And before you knew it, we were married and having a child, and it evolved.
Stunning, beautiful.
That's lovely.
Do you think, Clint, is there a stigma attached to being a kept man, forgive the term?
I think all those stereotypes are still there to a degree, but since I've been a stay-at-home dad, which is just under 7 years, I've noticed a massive change. Early on, I copped some comments from some work colleagues, you know, like, oh, at least you know your place, and these sort of little underhanded comments that could make you get your back up a bit. But I've noticed just recently things have really changed. There's more men at kinder pickups, dropping kids off. You're more likely to see blokes at immunisation appointments these days. Yes. So the roles, the acceptance of what men and women can do, I think, is really changing. So I haven't noticed it as much, but I have noticed it, if anywhere, still in advertising and product placement. If I walk down the aisle to get all my work tools, which are nappies and wipes and that sort of stuff, I'll see women looking at me from the products, you know. I'll very rarely see a man or any sort of, and some of them are even called like mum's nappies, you know. So still there's
we've still got a bit of change to go.
Yeah, on a grassroots level I think it's changing, but I think advertising still has a long way to go.
For sure. OK, well, that's what we think. Let's go out on the streets and find out what the people had to say.
Traditionally, men have been the main breadwinners, but times are changing and roles are reversing. Let's see if people have a problem with that. Would you be happy to be the main breadwinner and your partner be the stay-at-home dad?
No, certainly not.
Not if they fulfill the duties that are entailed of being a stay-at-home parent.
Oh, I haven't really given it that much thought, but I wouldn't mind being a stay-at-home dad, you know.
Not at all. Not at all.
I don't think there's a problem with a man staying at home, looking after the kids.
Yeah, if the missus was bringing home the bacon.
I just believe that men should be the providers in a relationship. I just think it's how it's always been and how it should be. Is that really bad?
I would prefer somebody who'd like to stay at home. I think it shows like a great quality of character, as well as it's just, why shouldn't they? It just seems absurd and bizarre. It's 2013.
No, I think they can provide a child with as good an upbringing as what a female could.
Because where I grew up, it was the normal thing to do, that the man is the one who brings the money and you're the one who's raising the children and cooking.
Well, mother brings a different kind of like upbringing to what a father would. A mother's probably a little bit more emotionally connected to their child as opposed to what some of the fathers would be, but you know, dads can run around in the backyard with the kids more than what a mum could, so it has its benefits and also its downside.
What if your husband wanted to stay home?
If I was making enough money, I could probably agree to something.
Okay, so you're not totally fixed?
No, but I think he probably is more so than I am. I don't think he'd ever come to me and ask me to be the worker. No.
Some interesting opinions there. Welcome to our Street Talk reporter, Sandra Cavallo.
How are you going?
Really good. Did you feel some of that was a little stereotyping?
I was actually quite surprised. I actually thought that the majority of people would say, oh, no, still expect the guy to go out and work and the woman stay at home. I was actually surprised to hear that the majority of people were fine with it and totally cool. But one of the interesting things I found was one of the guys said, oh, the father can be the one who's, kicking the footy around at the backyard, and the mum is the one who provides all the emotional connection. And I was actually wondering, well, if that reverses, is there a problem with that? Is there anything that lacks?
Yeah, like I picked that up too, the emotional connection. Can a father provide that?
Well, of course he can.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just complete rubbish stereotypes that, I thought that was surprised by the majority of those opinions as well. It's all about the time in the job, basically. Traditionally, men have been in the away from home role and haven't, almost without choice, haven't had as much to do with the kids. So we haven't just had as much experience with emotion. But I can tell you after this much time in the role that the more time you spend there, the better you get at those skills. So you become better at expressing your emotions and dealing with them at talking, because women are naggers and men aren't apparently. So
you've got 4 boys.
Yeah.
So it's easier to tell a little boy, get up, wipe your leg, you'll be fine. Whereas I wonder how you'd go if you had a little princess that, how would that be?
Well, it changes the dynamic, because I know that even Chloe, she's 10 now and she's just learnt to use the mobile phone. And there are days when I get he doesn't understand me.
Oh, too cute.
I'm home. So there's never a drama.
At those times, do you go home and go out the back with Chloe and kick the footy?
No. No, then she hands the phone over and Mark will talk me through what's going on and, it's all
gone. And is it a girl deal?
It's a girl deal, but, he certainly says once she gets to that next stage that he'll consider moving out. So it's going to be an interesting one. But I just playing on your street talk, to me it just goes back to the relationship and the team. You're building a team in the family and, I look at work-life balance and, what's the new definition of that? And I think that's just for us has been, I've got my role in the work, Mark brings the life balance to the family. And I just think that's the dynamic. And as long as there's no ego, I would suggest that was probably the most critical characteristic, because I think that's where I think there's a risk. And then you do get into all those financial conversations. But if you decide for your family this is the right setup and you can actually do that,
and it is a role. I think what you were saying, Clint, is very valuable. The more you understand your role and do it and not try to, step in and out of roles, I think that's easier.
Yeah. But if the man has been traditionally validated because he brings home the bacon, so to speak, and you don't have a strong self-esteem in that area, that could potentially be a problem?
Of course it can. I've talked to blokes who it would be better for their family financially and just in general if they stayed at home, but they couldn't do it because of the social pressures. So, and it's disappointing to hear women saying that sort of stuff as well, because they're basically saying in reverse that we belong at home. We don't have any other options in our lives. I mean, basically what you're doing with those sort of opinions is taking choices away from families about how they can set themselves up, and that's all these potential paths to happiness. Because mum at home, dad at work doesn't work for everyone. It's not the best option, but we seem to be stuck in that with this silly stereotypical views.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting conversation. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. We'll be back in just a moment on The Exchange. Welcome back to The Exchange. We're chatting with Global General Manager of Cotton On, Felicity McGahan, and stay-at-home dad and writer, Clint Greagen, about whether or not men and women are okay with switching roles in the households. Clint, as a stay-at-home dad, have you had to go to mums clubs at all?
Very early on, I went to a couple of Tanya's mothers groups that were organised through the hospital where our babies were born. But no, I go to a dad's group. I've been going to a dad's group for last 6 years.
Okay.
Northern Dads Group in Melbourne, which is really cool.
Wonderful. And just dads go there?
Yeah.
You don't
we occasionally have a mum come along.
Okay, cool. Because that's what happens. I mean, when our kids were younger, I would go along to some of the groups. If Christie was working, take our youngest, and I'd be the token dad, I guess.
Yeah, we have some of the mums that come along of the dads who once attended the group who have now gone back to work, and so because we've made a connection with everyone, they just come along and yeah, they're pretty cool. You get to hang out, talk about your usual day and stuff related to parenting and not related to parenting, and kids go off and terrorise someone else's house for a little while, and yeah, it's really good affirming thing to see other people in the same role as you. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Brilliant.
What are some of the major roles that you have faced, Felicity? Major issues, rather, that you have faced?
I suppose one of them was just having the kids kind of understand what it's like to go to work, because they see Mark as he's the worker and they don't see what I do.
Right.
So there's been, you know, if we're having, you know, an argument or something, Chloe's like, be nice to him, he works harder than you. And I was like, you know, I need to take her to work one day. So I actually took her to work and showed her what it was like, you know, when I left, and it was just good to give her both sides and the perspective.
How was she when she got home?
It was funny because it was a big day, and it was just like my assistant asked me if I could squeeze an interview in at the end of it, and I decided to push her to the limit.
Good.
And pushed her to the limit, and she got home and she said she took 2 days to get over it. So and I dragged her to every meeting too. She had a little clipboard and
So
reports.
She's never accused you of that again,
No, now
right?
she realises work's not a day spa and I am actually doing something. So
It's sort of like the movie Freaky Friday. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Role reversal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What about you? Have you faced any major issues with what you do?
In terms
with
of
the kids, like, I mean, I suppose they're too young yet, really, to.
We have some really funny comments. The other day, Lewis said to my wife, you know, I want to be a girl so I don't have to clean. You know, and he wants to be a stay-at-home dad as well. So I haven't had the kids again. Just think this is the way things are done.
Yeah.
It's a few times we've said, you know, talked about other families, and they've said, but you know, dads don't work. You know, this sort of stuff. So I suppose they just grow up in that environment.
Frame of reference.
It's just normal.
And do you bake and make the muffins and all that sort of stuff?
Actually, I'm not very good at cooking. I cook 90% of the meals. My kids will probably forget 90% of the meals they eat, I think, because I've got some basics that I dish out pretty much 4 or 5 times a week. But if there's that's another way for my wife to connect with the kids as well. Every birthday she will put an effort into making their birthday cake, so something she really gets a kick out of, and the boys will help her. So I'm not so good, so I'm glad my wife enjoys doing it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, we really appreciate you both coming in and sharing your lives with us. And it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure that the things that you've shared will be very helpful to other people. And so, Felicity and Clint, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Please go to our website for fact sheets and more information about this show, The Exchange. We look forward to seeing you next time.
See you then.